Hey everyone, welcome back to Mr. Nightvale. Tonight we're talking 3 scary true security guard stories people can't explain and still give them chills. If you enjoy creepy stories, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and tell me in the comments which story scared you the most. Now sit back, turn off the lights, and let's explore experiences that might make you question what's really out there. Story 1. The Monolith in the Woods. I have been with this security firm for exactly 6 years, 2 months and 4 days in the world of private security. That makes me a veteran. Most guys don't last 6 months. They realize quickly that the job isn't like the movies. It isn't about chasing down bad guys or being a hero. It is about 99% boredom and 1% sheer unadulterated terror. Because of my seniority, I usually have my pick of the contracts I worked. The downtown high-rises, the tech campuses with their glass walls and gourmet break rooms, and the quiet gated communities where the biggest threat was a teenager spray painting a mailbox. Then came the government contract. The building was a massive 6-story concrete slab. It was located in a geographic dead zone, a place where the GPS tends to spin in circles before giving up to get there. You had to exit the main highway drive 5 miles down a 2-lane road that hadn't been paved since the 90s, and then turn onto a private gravel access road that cut through 3 miles of dense primary growth forest. The forest was the kind that felt alive. The trees were packed so tightly together that even during the day, the ground was draped in a permanent twilight. The building sat in the center of a massive clearing surrounded by a 10-foot chain-link fence, topped with coils of razor wire that glinted like shark teeth under the floodlights. There was one gate, one way in, one way out. The building itself was an architectural nightmare. No windows on the first 2 floors, just grey concrete. It was a government office supposedly for administrative records, but we all knew that was a lie. You don't put administrative records behind a 10-foot fence in the middle of a forest where no one can hear you scream during the day. The place was a hive. 3 guards, dozens of staff. But the night shift was a different story. The turnover rate for the weekend overnight shift was 100%. Nobody stayed. They claimed the building made noises or that they felt like they were being watched from the tree line. My supervisor was desperate. He offered me double time and a seniority bonus to cover the Friday to Sunday graveyard shift until they could find a permanent warm body. I was moving into a new apartment and the deposit was steep. I said yes. It was the worst mistake of my life. The first 2 weekends were uneventful, boring even. I'd sit in the 6th floor control room surrounded by 3 massive monitors displaying 32 different camera feeds. I had my Game Boy, my phone, loaded with movies, and a thermos of coffee that tasted like battery acid. The 3rd Saturday, the sky turned the color of a bruised plum. A thunderstorm was rolling in from the valley and the air pressure was so low it made my ears pop by 100 AM. The rain was coming down in sheets, blurring the camera feeds into grey static. The wind was howling, whipping the trees against the perimeter fence. I stood up around 200 AM. My legs were cramping and I was starting to see spots from staring at the screens. I walked over to the small window in the control room and pulled back the heavy blinds. A massive crack of lightning split the sky, illuminating the entire clearing for a fraction of a second. In that flash, I saw him. A figure was standing just outside the fence near the back parking lot, but it wasn't just standing there, it was moving. It darted from the tree line to a large oak tree with a speed that didn't seem human. It was a blur of black against the grey rain. I held my breath, my forehead pressed against the cold glass. I waited for the next flash. 1, 2, 3 crack. The lightning lit up the oak tree. The space beneath the branches was empty. My heart started to thud in my chest, a slow, heavy rhythm. I told myself it was a deer, a bear, anything but a person. I went to the vending machine down the hall to get an energy drink, hoping the caffeine would clear the night shifter's hallucinations. I returned 5 minutes later. I sat down, cracked the tab on the can, and looked at the monitors. Monitor 2, camera 4, the back parking lot was gone. The screen was a flat, humming black. I leaned in, checking the connection, then I looked out the window again. The camera was mounted on a pole near the back entrance in the glow of the perimeter lights. I could see it wasn't broken by the wind, it was dangling. The housing had been ripped open and the wires were trailing in the wind like guts. My hand went to the radio on my belt control to anyone. I whispered, then realized how stupid that was. I was the only one there. Suddenly the console emitted a sharp, digital chirp. My eyes flew to the access log. The back loading dock door, a door that required a high-level security clearance and a 6-digit encrypted code, had just been opened. The screen showed a green text access. Granted user admin 01, there was no admin 01 on the weekend. That code was reserved for the regional director, who was currently 300 miles away in a beach house. I felt a cold sweat break out across my neck. I reached for the desk phone to call the police. I lifted the receiver, no dial tone, just a low, rhythmic clicking. I pulled out my cell phone, no service. The storm or something else had killed the signal. Then the lights flickered once, twice, and then with a heavy clunk of a giant relay, the building went dark. I was on the 6th floor, the intruder was on the 1st. I knew the building's layout by heart. The only way out was the main lobby or the service stairs. I decided to head for the stairs. I pulled my flashlight, but I didn't turn it on. I didn't want to be a beacon. I moved by the dim glow of the emergency exit signs. I reached the 4th floor landing when I heard the sound that will haunt me until the day I die. Thud, thud, thud. Heavy, rhythmic footsteps were coming up the concrete stairs. They weren't sneaking, they were heavy, like someone wearing combat boots. They were coming from the 2nd floor, moving fast. I froze. My hand went to my sidearm. I had been through the training, but I had never drawn my weapon in the line of duty. My fingers were slick with sweat as I shifted my weight. My holster hit the metal handrail, clang. The sound echoed through the stairwell like a gunshot. The footsteps below stopped instantly. Total silence. I didn't even hear the wind anymore. I held my breath until my lungs burned. Then from 2 floors down, I heard a sound that made my skin crawl. It was a low, wet chuckle. Then the footsteps started again, but this time they were sprinting. I turned and bolted back up toward the 6th floor. I wasn't thinking, I was reacting. I knew I couldn't beat him to the lobby. I remembered the roof hatch at the top of the stairs. There was a maintenance ladder that led to a heavy steel hatch. I reached the 6th floor door. I grabbed the handle, pulled it open with all my might, and slammed it shut hard, but I didn't go through it. I stayed in the stairwell, ducking behind the massive concrete pillar that supported the ladder. Seconds later, the door at the bottom of the flight burst open. I saw a silhouette, a man tall and broad, wearing a matte black tactical mask and a heavy rain parka. He didn't even look around the stairwell. He saw the 6th floor door, assumed I had gone through it, and charged into the hallway the moment the door hissed shut behind him. I moved. I didn't use the ladder. I jumped down the flight of stairs, landing hard on the landing below. I ignored the pain in my ankles and flew down the stairs. I reached the lobby, fumbled with my master key, and burst out into the rain. I ran for my truck, hit the fob, and heard the engine roar to life as I backed out. The headlights swept across the front glass of the lobby. He was standing there behind the glass. He wasn't wearing the mask anymore. He was just a man, pale and smiling, holding a semi-automatic handgun. He didn't fire up, he just watched me drive away. The police found the gun in the stairwell. They never found him, and they never explained how he had a director's access code. I quit the next morning. I don't work nights anymore. I don't even like being in buildings with more than 2 floors, because I know that somewhere there's a man with a code and he's just waiting for the next person to work the weekend shift. Story 2. The wet slap of bare feet. There is a specific kind of silence that exists only in corporate office buildings at 3 in the morning. It's not a peaceful silence, it's a heavy artificial quiet built out of industrial grey carpet, humming fluorescent lights, and the stale scent of ozone and floor wax. I worked as a night guard for a mid-sized firm in New Jersey, one of those glass and steel boxes that looks impressive during the day, but feels like a hollow ribcage. Once the sun goes down, my routine was a slow motion loop of boredom. I'd sit at the mahogany desk in the lobby, surrounded by the blue light of 16 security monitors. Every 2 hours, I'd walk the perimeter, the jingle of my keys. The only thing reminding me I was still awake, it was a do-nothing job until the night. The garage feed changed. I was leaning back, half watching a monitor showing the P2 level of the underground parking garage. The garage was a concrete cavern 3 levels deep at midnight. It should have been a graveyard of empty spaces and oil stains. But as I scanned the screen, I saw movement. A figure was weaving between the concrete pillars. I sat up, my heart doing a slow, heavy roll in my chest. This wasn't a car pulling in. This was a man. He was wearing a long, dark coat that looked 3 sizes too large, hanging off his frame like a wet shroud. He wasn't looking for a vehicle. He was inspecting the walls. He'd walk a few paces, stop, press his face, literally press his forehead against a concrete pillar, and stand there for 10 seconds before moving to the next one. It was the offness of his movement that got to me. He didn't walk. He lurched his body, tilting at an angle that looked like he was about to fall over, only to right itself at the last second. I radioed my supervisor. I've got a trespasser on P2, tall, male, dark coat. He's acting erratic. The supervisor's voice came back crackling and bored. Probably a vagrant looking for a warm spot. Just stay at the desk. Keep eyes on him. If he touches a door, call the cops, but I couldn't just sit there. Something about the way he was hugging those pillars felt predatory. I grabbed my heavy mag light and headed for the elevators. The ride down to P2 felt like it took an hour. The elevator hummed, the floor numbers ticking down. 432, 1LP, 1P2. Ding, the doors slid open. The garage was freezing. The air tasted like exhaust and damp stone. I stepped out my flashlight, cutting a bright, violent hole in the darkness. Security, I shouted. My voice bounced off the low ceiling, echoing back to me a dozen times. The garage is private property. You need to leave now. Nothing, no footsteps, no breathing. I walked the length of P2. I checked behind the SUVs, under the ramps, and in the storage alcoves. The garage was dead, not a soul. I even checked the CCTV camera itself to see if someone was hiding directly beneath it. Empty. I shook my head, thinking I'd finally succumbed to monitor fever. I went back to the lobby, feeling a mix of relief and embarrassment. I sat back down in my chair, took a sip of lukewarm coffee, and looked at the P2 monitor. My blood turned to liquid nitrogen. He was there. He was standing in the exact center of the drive lane, staring directly into the camera lens. He was so close to the camera that I could see his eyes, or rather the lack of them. His brow was deep, and the shadows made his face look like a skull, and he was grinning a wide, toothy, impossible grin that didn't change. As he stood perfectly still, I had just been there. I had stood in that exact spot 30 seconds ago. There was no way he could have hidden from me. Then he moved. He didn't run. He leaned forward and began to walk toward the stairwell door. As he walked, he reached up and began to unbutton his coat. I watched paralyzed as the coat fell to the concrete floor underneath. He was wearing nothing but tattered, filth-stained trousers. He was skeletal, his ribs pushing against his skin like a cage. He reached the stairwell door, and that's when I noticed his feet. He wasn't wearing shoes. His feet were black with grime, and as he stepped, I could see the wet, glistening trail he was leaving behind. He vanished into the stairwell. I checked the monitors for the lobby stairwell door. It was only 1 flight up. I waited, my hand hovering over the phone, to call 911. 5 minutes passed. 10, no one came out of the stairwell. I checked the P1 cameras, the second floor cameras, the roof, nothing. He had vanished inside the lungs of the building. I decided I had to lock the lobby. I stood up, but as I moved toward the front glass doors, the elevator behind me hissed. I froze, I didn't turn around, I couldn't, the doors stayed open. The lobby was silent except for a new sound, a wet, rhythmic slapping sound, splat, slap, splat, slap. It was coming from inside the elevator. I slowly turned my head. The elevator was empty, but there on the polished marble floor of the elevator car were 5 wet, perfectly formed footprints. Bare feet, the water was dark, smelling faintly of stagnant pond water and rot. The prints led out of the elevator and stopped exactly 3 feet behind where I was standing. He was in the lobby. I couldn't see him, but I could feel the cold radiating off him. I didn't scream. I didn't think I just ran. I bolted for the emergency exit, my shoes squeaking on the tile as I reached the heavy metal door. I looked back. He was standing by my desk. He was hunched over my half-finished coffee, his long, pale fingers dipping into the cup. He turned his head toward me, his neck cracking with a sound like dry kindling. He began to run. He didn't run like a man. He dropped to all fours, his spine arching upward, his limbs moving in a frantic, insect-like scuttle, splat, slap, splat, slap, splat. The sound of his bare skin hitting the floor was deafening in the empty lobby. I slammed the emergency door shut and heard his body hit the other side with a sickening thud, followed by the sound of long fingernails scratching against the steel. I didn't stop until I was in my car with the doors locked when the police arrived. They found the garage door open and my coffee cup knocked over, but there were no footprints, no wet trails, and when they pulled the DVR for the security footage, the entire hour of the encounter was gone. The file was corrupted, a jagged block of digital noise where a monster should have been. I never went back for my last paycheck. Sometimes when I'm in a quiet place and the floor is a little damp, I think I can hear it, that wet, heavy slap of skin on stone right behind me. Story 3. The ambush at the clinic. They call it mobile patrol, but really it is just being a target in a marked car. My name is Mark. This happened in Mississauga during my first night of training. I was 22, eager, unprepared. My trainer, Dave, was calm and experienced, the kind of man who had seen too much. We were checking a medical clinic late at night. The parking lot was empty. Orange lights flickered above us. Dave stopped suddenly. "Something is wrong," he said. The garage gate was bent open. The glass doors were shattered outward. Inside the building, everything was quiet. Too quiet. The elevator display lit up. It stopped at the 4th floor. Then the down arrow appeared. We took the stairs. Halfway up, we heard a heavy thud above us like something had fallen. Dave opened his baton. The sound made my chest tighten. On the 4th floor, we saw it. A tall shadow at the end of the hallway. It did not run. It stepped into a room and vanished. Inside, the staff lounge files were arranged in a circle. A surgical blade stood upright in the floor. We turned to leave, then we heard footsteps, slow dragging. Step drag, step drag. Dave called for backup. 10 minutes away, we hid in a dark room. The handle moved, then humming soft and wrong. Finally, sirens arrived. When we checked the cameras, a figure had stepped out of the elevator. Its lab coat was backwards, its head bent sideways. It danced, then walked into a wall and disappeared. I quit that night. Dave quit too. Some say it was a squatter, but a squatter does not hum through steel doors. I drive deliveries now, only during the day. I never use elevators.